Stellantis is temporarily closing several of its plants across Canada and Mexico. The Stellantis plant in Windsor will be closing for 2 weeks, beginning on April 7th, with operations resuming the week of April 21st. The company is also pausing production at the Mexico assembly plant to assess the tariffs and their impact. The automaker company says the suspension in production will result in the temporary layoff of about 900 U.S. employees in Michigan and Indiana.
And I've been saying all along, I thought it would last about a week, but obviously it's right down to days now on the supply chain. And I've been saying this over and over again, a tariff on Canada is a tax on Americans. I mentioned termination day. There's a perfect example. That's just one company, one sector, not to mention all the other sectors. If they continue wanting to go after our lumber is used for housing in the U.S. It's a high-grade lumber, and that's just going to drive the cost up of housing. If they continue to go after the auto sector, it's going to drive the cost up of autos for Americans.
Canada's auto industry, as we've been telling you, will be among the hardest hit by the new round of tariffs. Unifor National President Lana Payne joins us now live with her reaction to these latest developments. Lana, good to see you. We talked about 24 hours ago as we were kind of following the bouncing ball of this all unfolding. Now we've heard from the Prime Minister and his response, Canada essentially matching a 25% tariff on U.S.-made vehicles. What do you make of that move? And is that going to, I guess, give a little bit of courage or support to auto workers across this country as well?
I mean, I think it was incredibly important that the Prime Minister sent a signal today that our government was going to do whatever it could to protect the auto footprint in Canada, to protect auto workers, and to make sure that we have an industry when we come out of this trade war. And the reality is, one of the ways we can do that is to make sure that we are using a carrot and a stick approach in terms of putting pressure on companies to make sure that they keep production in Canada. And if you build here, you won't face tariffs. If you decide to do something else, then you're going to be punished. And I think sending that kind of a signal is really important. But boy, we've got some rough days ahead. 6,000 of our members today got temporary layoff notices. And I expect we're going to see more announcements in the days and weeks ahead based on the fact that this supply chain will not be able to bear the impact of these tariffs.
Sorry, Lana, I want to clarify, 6,000 Unifor members who work in the auto industry were issued layoff notices today. And where did that happen?
Temporary layoff notices. So Windsor assembly plant, the Stellantis plant, which employs several thousand people, that plant is shutting down for a couple of weeks as Stellantis assesses the tariff on their own supply chain. And as a result of that, there are many hundreds, thousands of workers in the supply chain who support that assembly plant, and they won't be working for the next couple of weeks either. So we've seen the impact of this very quickly. And as a result of that, you've also seen layoffs in the United States because we have auto parts workers in the U.S. who supply parts to the Windsor assembly plant. That is how interconnected this industry is across North America. And all you see is as a result of this decision from Stellantis is just how interconnected it is. You can't put a tariff on Canada without it impacting the United States.
Let's talk more about Stellantis, Lana, because I was just chatting with my colleague from CTV Windsor who talked about the ripple effect of this. She said that for every one job at Stellantis, that supports essentially 7 people in the city of Windsor. And of course, if these auto workers are temporarily laid off, they're not going to go spend their money at a restaurant or other small businesses in those communities. She talked about the fact that the union, actually, Unifor, was telling these workers, hold on to your money. Like, don't necessarily go out and have dinner with your families at a restaurant. Is there this kind of direction, I guess, happening for these workers, saying just be cautious because you don't know if it's good 3 weeks for now, but could be longer?
I mean, this is what we're up against right now. It's the uncertainty, the daily uncertainty, the daily chaos from decisions that change within a 24-hour period from the United States. So yeah, people are being cautious with their spending. They're also very concerned about what this will mean for them and for their jobs. And the reality is that we know that this is going to increase the cost of vehicles. Studies have shown anywhere between $3,000 and $12,000 in terms of how much more the cost of a vehicle will be, because we also have steel and aluminum tariffs that impact the auto industry, as you know. So it's not just the auto tariff, and we can get into a situation where the cost gets to a point where people don't buy vehicles as much. And so sales drop, and that ends up impacting production on both sides of the border. We have to be concerned with the fact that what the president did yesterday in terms of global tariffs around the world will have an impact on the global economy, and of course that means jobs here at home too. So this is going to be a very challenging time. And I think, the reality is Canada has to take this one step at a time and continue to be very strong and strategic in its response.
I want to ask you, Lana, also about the Stellantis plant out in Brampton. I think it was back in February. There was kind of a pause for retooling. That's where they assembled the Jeep Compass. What's your understanding about what's happening at that plant, and if there's any deadlines or timelines as to when reopening could happen and workers could get back to work there?
Yeah, I mean, this is the other challenge, obviously, is Stellantis Brampton plant is currently under retooling. They are assessing a number of things with this plant right now. We are told that their commitment to the Brampton plant is as strong as ever. But the reality is there's so much uncertainty out there now. Every single day is about making phone calls for me and pressuring whoever I can to make sure that commitment stays there. And part of what the government did this morning, what the Prime Minister did this morning in terms of sending a signal to the auto industry and the automakers that if you want to have access to our market in Canada, you need to build here. You need to keep your footprint here. You need to continue to have production in this country. That was incredibly important and will be helpful in the long run to us protecting this industry as we work our way through this trade war.
We heard from Prime Minister Carney this morning, Lana, saying every penny that Canada gets from these reciprocal tariffs, essentially, these 25% on American vehicles, is going to go directly to workers. What does that look like? And what does your conversation look like with the Prime Minister in terms of making sure that these auto workers are supported?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things here that need to happen. Obviously, our position would be, first and foremost, we have to do everything possible to keep people working. And if that isn't possible, then we're doing the second thing, which is making sure that the supports for workers are robust if they're experiencing a layoff. But there's also other things that we can do with the revenue that gets created through these reciprocal tariffs, and that is to support industry, to invest in the auto industry, and to make sure that we're shoring up these plants and facilities, not just for today, but for the next generation of workers. So there are any number of things that we can do right now to make sure we're protecting the auto industry for workers today and down the road.
Certainly tough and uncertain times. Unifor National President Lana Payne, thanks so much for joining us here on CP24.
Thank you.